Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I am your host, Kat Kinsman, senior editor at Food and Wine. I'm ridiculously excited about today's guest, who I've been trying to chase down for a very long time, because I have been reading his cookbooks for ages. They have transformed the way that I think about achievable home cooking, and especially salads, which we will get into some. He has a new book called Ultimate Veg, which just came out in the U.S. He has been at the helm of some really exciting and important restaurants in the UK, host a gazillion television shows, and has just really a force for what I think is the future of food. This is not actually a podcast. We're actually going to turn the lights down so you can have a nap.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I get to sleep now.
Yeah. When have you last been able to stop and have a nap? Because you
In
have
the day?
anytime, because you have a million jobs.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I sleep well at night because I'm so exhausted. But I know it's a good moment when I'm in a hammock, I see blue sky, and I'm allowed to sleep in the day.
Oh my goodness.
The idea of a siesta is like my idea of pure heaven.
Oh my gosh. So what do you do with your phone at that point? Can you just like cast that into the sea?
No, because I don't want sand to get in there. God forbid my phone has anything. I think I'm falling out of love with my phone. I mean, it's definitely an addictive, efficient source. And I think if you work in the sort of world of the written word, design, filming, seeing cuts, you never switch off.
No.
And I think now I've got kids as well. I think the debate of our time right now is kind of our relationship and your family's relationship with screens.
It really is so difficult because we've both been at this for a while, and the landscape of our sort of who gets our attention has changed so much. I wanted to say a thank you to you for, there's no way in the world you would remember this, but I was just talking with your publicist. 1,000 years ago, I was present at a radio show that you were doing with Martha Stewart.
Yes.
And you were talking really openly about having been underestimated as a kid because you had a rough time in school.
Yep.
And about teachers not being very kind about that, and you really feeling like you had to apply yourself. And I wanted to thank you for your honesty about that, because also I feel like you've been incredibly honest about what the toll that this particular industry takes. So let's talk about this, because we're going to get to this book, which is a fantastic book. It's Jamie Oliver, Ultimate Veg, holding it up for people who can see it on camera. I have been so excited by this book because I've been cooking from your books for a very long time, and it's really helped me become a better cook. Whenever I make a salad, I think of your evolution salads.
Yeah,
it
man.
really completely transformed.
Never have to be boring.
No, you wear so many different hats, and
Yes.
you write cookbooks. You have to be on. I saw you early this morning making a lasagna on TV.
Yeah, that's a different type of on.
Yeah.
Live TV America, Good Morning America is a different type of on.
Yeah.
But I think many different hats you've hit it on the head.
Yeah, and there is the particular masochism of restaurants, and you've had a crazy road with all of those, and you're delving back into some restaurants. How are you taking care of yourself while you're going through everything that you do?
Well,
How are you?
Well, I'm really good now.
Good.
I think it's I'm just kind of working out roughly me.
Yeah.
And I think, most of my best moments in my life, I think have been defined by sort of single-mindedness, but just being stupid enough.
I know that feeling.
Like a lot of, when I set up 15, which is a restaurant that ran for 17 years, which took kids
Congratulations. That is a long time for a restaurant.
Yeah. And we had the 15 project took kids from the projects, from prison, and we made them passionate about food at a very high level. We were able to graduate 80%, and 80% of those kids would stay in the industry, sort of 5 years on. I've got students with Michelin stars. I haven't. So I'm very proud of 15. But, I think that the idea of being just naive or stupid enough is worth embracing. Being clever and conservative and measured is definitely worth embracing as well. I think I have succeeded and failed with both of those sort of very disparate emotions. I think if you're too clued up, magical things don't happen because everything gets a bit beige. And if you haven't got belt and braces in place, then you end up losing things that are really precious because something you didn't think of happened.
Yeah.
And your business, whether it was the labour model or the rents or the rates, or how you're structured just wasn't bendy enough to survive that year or that 2 years. So that's, I feel like I'm actually in a really amazing place of wisdom. Weirdly, although I lost all my UK restaurants last year.
I know that had to be an incredibly painful thing. I've seen so many friends go through this, and it's a funny thing. People focus on restaurants closing, but they don't pay attention to how long they were open. And having a restaurant survive beyond the first year or so is an incredibly tough thing to do in the first place.
It was kind of an experiment as well. I mean, I grew up in a family business. Mm-hmm. I grew up on small and local, and then I kind of only worked professionally in small and local restaurants. And then, like, the restaurants that I lost, they lived for 13 years. I'll give you the QT because I think it's kind of fascinating.
Please tell.
And they're dead now, so there's not like I'm kind of building a story for my own kind of ego.
Right.
But the experiment for me, from its kind of nucleus, was how do you make high-level sourcing ingredients live in mid-market dining? Mm-hmm. So by paying people better, by giving all the staff their tips from day one, from getting higher welfare meat, sustainable fish, at the right price. We did it for 13 years. We turned over £1 billion. So
Good
I don't know
God.
what that is in dollars.
A lot.
We paid over £100 million in tax to the government. That kept a few schools going, right? We paid people well, and to the moment we died.
Yeah.
There were, when we did die, I personally paid up all the staff so that they didn't kind of go through terrible stuff.
Yeah.
But I never paid myself £1, not even a dividend.
Really?
So I think like that puts me, the reality is, so if you're going to be binary about it, you go, well, you lost. Dude, you lost. And that's the truth, we did. Mm-hmm. But it was always an experiment. Mm-hmm. If I was only interested in my own ego, I'd have one restaurant and I'd make it the best one on the planet.
Use lots of
and,
tweezers.
We'd be completely pretentious and we'd have stars everywhere. And it was but what I can tell you is we were so close to getting it right. And for 9 years it worked. Incredible. It can work. My ships that I built were just not bendy enough. It's a bit like big buildings in Japan have got like suspension on the bottom. And like we had like big buildings like business, like restaurants like that, bustling places with like lovely free range chicken. And we were selling our chicken plates at the same plate as every other bag of shit restaurant down the mid-market, but when the sort of high street decline, when the sort of the Uberization of our world happened, which was about 4 years ago, when no one wanted to sit down for lunch anymore because they're so busy, and the digital side really ramped up, and we didn't have restaurants geared up for that.
Right.
When our kitchens required cooks to cook in instead of reheating, my ships were like not fit for the kind of shockwaves that were going to come. So sadly, after 3 years of battling to save them, I lost them all. But I have to say, I'm really good on stress. I'm really good at bubbling situations, emotions, creativity, jobs. But even like last year, I was probably at my edge.
And
there was like 2 weeks when I thought I was going to have a heart attack, which was frightening, and I couldn't go to anyone about it because there were other moving parts that I couldn't fess up to.
That's the hardest thing, is when you don't have that release valve. Where do you put that? Because I've been in that low place before, and I was lucky enough to have a few people who I could reach out to and be like, I'm in trouble. This is not good.
I think the good thing that we did, it sounds like a really weird thing to say, and actually the weird, genuinely, I'm grateful for my failure, because I still feel I've got another 15 years to give.
Yeah.
And I still hope that I can do some extraordinary things.
You're younger than I am.
And
you're good.
And I think like when you kick off the genesis of something beautiful, anything, but in my case, a restaurant, like you never think of death.
Right. You can't go...
or failure. So what I was able to do, and what I am really proud of, is as we couldn't find the investment we needed to sort of do what we needed to with the estate that we had. So therefore it was going to die. So because I prepared for that for about a year and a half, I was able to do the best version of bad. So what does that mean? It means that, the vast majority of suppliers were paid, and the ones that weren't, I had enough restaurants where I could kind of just overpay. But there's all legalities and stuff going on with this, that, and the other. So you just got to do it the right way. I personally made sure all my staff were paid, and we kind of did it. We did the best version of bad. But no one ever talks about that. They just talk about success or failure. But that, you know,
There's
so
so
I think
much to be
it's
learned in the
it's-
grey.
Absolutely. And now if I ever did another restaurant, I mean, look, the upside of what happened was I have 70 restaurants in 23 countries that are well run, profitable, amazing partners. And I don't know how many other chefs get to do it on that level, but like I know it's fairly rare. So I'm very grateful for that. The downside is I lost my kind of home restaurants because Britain's an unusual place at the moment, and I wasn't fit for it. But I think if I ever did it again, like I feel much wiser about how I would do it, how I'd structure it, and where I would put staff and talent differently in the story.
I think that's such an important part of it, to talk about these things where it didn't work, but not because of people didn't put in their best efforts, not because anybody was dishonest, not because of anything, but sometimes there are outside factors that come in there. Who could have predicted political climate that is happening, the financial climate that is happening? So that wind down time is really important, because I've seen people absolutely lose their stuff during that. I mean, with the kind of work that I do with mental health in restaurants, I've seen people end their lives because of that, because they were taking it as a shock, or they didn't want to face the end. And I think facing ends gracefully is the thing that really helps people get through and helps the people under you.
And to add to your point is, like, everyone sort of said, well, you know, God, you know, what could be worse than losing all your restaurants? And I can tell you what's worse is trying to keep them alive.
Yeah.
The day that they went down was a very, very sad day, but there was tons of weight taken off my shoulders.
Did you feel like you were
worry,
standing taller,
financial
breathing?
hemorrhaging, and you know, so actually, like, we're in a really good, creative, busy, you know, well-run, profitable place now. Before it was just like, and also your pride makes you want to save something, but I think also. And I feel that I can talk about it like this because I never took a wage or a dividend. Like, really, in my own. Really, I just look at it as 15. I was basically running a charity for 13 years. That's really how I see it.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that we were cooking 7 million meals a year that were, you know, from, you know, every time we bought produce, it was voting for a system that was positive, not negative. You know, we were bucking the trends. We were busy. We were profitable. We were able to pay people, engaged staff at a level no one had seen, like, engaged staff. Like, we were getting sort of our sort of feedback on our staff serving was just amazing because they were so engaged. They went on trips to see where things came from, and it wasn't on a sort of singular one restaurant vibe, which we've all seen before. Right. It was on a multiple site sort of vibe. So I think, you know, I do see it as an amazing experiment, and of course, hindsight is a powerful master.
Well, I've also seen. I talk to a lot of British chefs about the system that happens over in the UK, and
I think it's easier than the US, by the way.
I have to say, a lot of the chefs who I have talked to have talked about the brigade system, still this sort of emotionally abusive place in the kitchen, and it is.
I think that's less common now.
It is definitely less common, but people came up through that, and they're still unlearning all of these things. But
sure.
Before your restaurants, I wasn't really seeing this very particular meld of advocacy and restaurants. Maybe people were doing it on an individual basis, but it's always been part of what I've considered to be your DNA with your cookbooks, with your restaurants and stuff. So how did you, if there wasn't a blueprint for that, what made you start doing that as part of your model?
I think, like, people always see me as being sort of businessy or businessman. Honestly, it's always creative first. And for me, it was like, okay, like, what does, like, casual mid-market dining look like where the pasta's made from scratch every single day by local people using organic eggs and like the correct flour and, you know, bread made and proved on site and, you know, meats marinated and I invented my own grill, you know, based on the old Al Matoni system. So instead of bricks wrapped in tinfoil, I just had these kind of male and female heavy bricks that you would preheat white hot, and then you'd cook deboned chickens marinated in like 3.5 minutes all the way through, but crispy skin.
But with your staffing too, though, that was a different model than maybe people were using
well,
before. People weren't going through the cooking school. You were taking maybe at-risk youth and training them up.
Well, that primarily was 15 for sure. And but of course, you know, if you did a survey of most of the restaurant industry, maybe the kids we were focused on at 15 aren't so dissimilar to a proportion of people that go into the catering industry at large.
Oh, heck yeah. No, it's sort of like there's a wonderful track from prison to restaurants and, you know, and there's a lot of that. But the fact that you...
I think where the difference is, sorry to interrupt, is that if I'm allowed to generalize on the sort of 500 students that we had in the 17 years that we ran, was there were patterns. I mean, there were patterns where they were mainly single parent families. You know, generally it was drug involved crime, and where the reoffending rate in the US and the UK of 18 to 24-year-old kids is really, really high. So if you want to buck that trend, which we did categorically every year, consistently, literally opposite statistics. So, you know, then you got to do more than just employ. And what we did was mentor, and that mentoring didn't stop and start. It was constant. Right. And then also... Like, you know, I'd have young 17-year-old kids that would earn a couple of grand a week stealing cars. You know, so if there were, and ironically, they were working a 5-day week. Honestly, they were making a couple of grand, 17 years old. You know, and then they got, you know, I could pay them $250, which was $250 more than I had at college, but still, it's $250. So how do you take? The only way you can...
What's your convincing argument here?
Well, passion, love.
Yeah. Respect, maybe?
Yeah, basically what I just tried to do was if I could get those students to stay on the course for 6 months, we could have them. And so if you start doing like autopsies on farm salmon versus wild, or if you take them to a proper pig farm, if you see them curing meats, if you show how to break down an animal and use every part, if you take them to Italy and introduce them to like dons of olive oil, dons of curing, they start to realize that, yes, of course, there's talent and there's things and it's inspiring, but I think more so and deeper than that was this kind of rhythm of consistency. Do you know what I mean? Like if you turn up and if you care and if you kind of smile, generally if you hang around long enough, you progress. Well, and if you progress, then you can normally flourish in some way.
It's amazing when you treat somebody like a human being, they tend to flourish. And I think a lot of the systems are set up to dehumanize people. And it's amazing what just looking somebody in the eye can do.
But I think when you got lack of hope in inner city parts of towns or cities, where you don't, you know, the further you pull kids away from shit growing. You know, I would take like big, burly, tough ex-gangsters into the country and they'd be flinching. They'd be looking over their shoulder going, they would be like vulnerable. Because everything was a bit green. And so I think like, you know, so for me so now I sort of see this value in like, okay, so how do we get the kids of the city into the country? How do we get the country into the city? And then vice versa as well. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of the problems that we have in the States and the UK at the moment are this kind of, you know, us and them approach. And, you know, and it's sort of like teams of football or kind of like, you know, and obviously politics helps in that. But I think, you know, there's generally speaking, in the world of food, I have never... If there's a good product, it doesn't matter if it's a beer or a cheese or a bread. If there's a good product, it's always made by incredible people. Always.
You can taste that, yeah.
And because, you know, the easy buck is not making, you know, slow fermenting, rare grain bread. You know, that's not how to make an easy buck.
No one's making a quick buck off a lot of kombucha.
So it's got to be love.
Or kimchi, I meant to say. Because you can taste the love and the care in that stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, it takes something like you really can taste that hand in it, and you can taste when people have cut corners, and when you invest in a person too, you know, they can grow and they can thrive in that particular way. And I feel like, are you able to look at all of this and see the people who have come through and what they have started and what they have done? And that's got to be a really gratifying thing.
In the last 7 years, I think it's been probably one of my biggest pleasures.
Yeah.
Seeing kids that you met at sort of 16 or 18, sort of running their own restaurants, like smashing it, focusing. What was really nice about the 15 program was like we'd train them all the same. We'd give them all the same love, care and attention, all the same resource, but they'd all come out different. So some would just want to run the best deli, obsessed by sandwiches. Yeah. Another one would be a bakery. Another one would be like a cake shop. Another one would be Michelin. You know, another one wants to go like Michelin hopping around the world, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, and some of the coolest restaurants in London now are ex-grads. you know, and that's amazing. And what's really nice is the last 5 years we were able to send students to those restaurants. So the only thing better than me training my 15 students is a 15 student training a 15 student. And you know, the only thing I really had in common with a lot of our students was the fact that I was rubbish at school and couldn't fit in. I had a really stable family and I was happy. But the school bit we all had in common.
Oh, that is really truly a through line that I talk with so many chefs who say like they're dyslexic, have some sort of learning disability, or it's just not their thing. And I think it's so important to learn that thing about yourself. Like, okay, maybe this is my particular skill set, but I am valuable still in a way. Like, I got diagnosed last year with ADHD, and for so many years I thought like I'm just a broken person who can't do these particular things. And to be able to really harness like what my brain can actually do. My
daughter was just diagnosed as that, and it was kind of a bit of a moment for us, really, because it means then. In the schooling situation, which of course you're out of, in a traditional sense, it means that you back it up with proper support, and you can take 90% of that away. That's kind of distracting you from being able to, attention deficit disorder. Yeah. I mean, they thought that she was disrupting school, but she was just like tapping to focus. Yeah. Like just to focus was a struggle.
And I've actually found that like kitchens are really good for people with OCD, and some with ADHD and different.
Well, they are if they're not full of drugs and booze. Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting one. Like places with hot oil and sharp knives is just. I mean, I know that I believe there's less now. I genuinely in the UK for sure.
There's definitely a shift.
But they, I think when they're full of drugs, which certainly 25 years ago, that it was like rife. Yeah. Not very good places to work.
No, it's there. I always talk about sort of this crucible of the 80s and 90s in restaurants in the US and the UK, that sort of, pirate ship mentality that our friend Anthony Bourdain would talk about, where there was this glorified masochism about, I can do the most hours, I can pull the most shifts, I can abuse my body to the nth degree, and you get rewarded for that you have pulled so many days, without any time off, and that is glorified somehow. And I really feel like there's been a cultural shift away from that, and I think there are various factors to it. I think there's the loss of life from a lot of people, including, Anthony Bourdain and some other, chefs, throughout the U.S. and Europe who've taken their own lives for various reasons and stuff. And I think they've realized that people aren't going to stay in the industry if there is that burnout. And I feel like there's been a move toward healthier channels.
I'm really kind of caught. I mean, I'm not caught as in between a place that is a loving, safe place where you have the capacity to learn and progress. I mean, I think that is a given. And actually every business should be able to harness that, not box it in and stay where they are, whether that's a good place or a bad place. But, better should always be an option. But I think for me, what I saw was like, in a natural sense, doing 80 to 100 hours a week was normal for me for the first 5 years of my life. And what that did for me was make me not spend lots of money. It made me progress and learn more because I did more hours, I did more stuff, which meant that I could kind of elevate through the kitchen structure quicker. Do you know what I mean? Like get on the grill.
Yeah, you get rewarded.
And you try and wait out someone to have a hangover and not turn up so you could get to run the grill section. Do you know what I mean? Like people forget how hard it is to get on a section and run it instead of being like the dog's body. So when the European law came in, it's of course logical and right to basically take the working week to a 48-hour week. So there's lots of positivity with that. As an employer, not being like a kind of whipping employer, but what I saw with my 15 students is they had energy at the end of the week, so they got into a lot more trouble.
Oh, really?
So they weren't tired enough.
Oh, goodness.
And as my dad would say, keep young boys busy.
How do you solve for that?
There's this righteous, logical, progressive kind of stance, which I completely agree in. And then there's this kind of like too many hours, but so what is mindless is too many mindless hours spent in the kitchen.
That makes sense.
But if you're putting graft in to institutions that give a shit, all you're investing in is your own career. So actually, it's not a loss. So it was interesting. But also what happens, of course, is then your kitchens can't afford more labor with less hours. So you end up with less hours, the same amount of people, and then less craft happens in the four walls. So you start buying in stuff. So it's a really juxtaposition for me, because like I'm kind of on the fence with it all. But what really makes me sick in my stomach is when you see like a diverse cooking fraternity through regulation becoming more pressurized to centralized procurement, centralized sort. You know, you've got quite posh restaurants now which are buying in everything made. And so really then we call them regen kitchens instead of kitchens. So like in my kitchens, we were marinating, we were grilling, we were making pasta. You know, on a quiet day, we'd have to have 5 guys in the kitchen. You know, all my competitors would have 2 or 3. You know, so financially, that's a massive advantage against us.
Yeah.
So you know, what's interesting is like, you know, but at the same time, you want you want the customers to have choice of everything, and you want that your offers in food to be diverse. So, how is it that a restaurant that cares is treated the same as, say, Domino's Pizza? Do you know what I mean?
This is very much the conundrum of the day. Like yes, you can taste it when people care, when there is that extra level of the sourcing that comes through, when you do get the thing that is very lovingly made. There are all different kinds of costs, and I'm weighing that all the time. What is the dollar cost? What is the time cost of things? And I think the dining public needs some more education about some of that.
There's got to be some tax relief, though, in my opinion.
Yeah,
There's got to be
I
some.
absolutely believe.
Tax relief to people that employ more people per 100 covers. You know, they're investing in employment. But also, like, when they're buying fruit and veg and fish, they're buying sustainable fish. And, you know, like, buying the cheapest food in the world and selling it cheap is the easiest thing in the world to do. And to make money out of it is the easiest part of our industry.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, so how do you incentivize chefs that care? And the care thing about food is interesting, isn't it? Because if you're a good chef and you care in your hood, by default, they're normally beautifully in tuned to the 100 miles around them. Whether it's like liquid enjoyment or, you know, like cured things or fish or meat, like, you know. And so like one little restaurant that cares has this incredible effect on these small farms and bakers and artisans that are not taking the easy route.
No,
do you know what I mean?
I recently met a dairy farmer who only supplies one restaurant in Trondheim. And he makes his entire living, and it's the best butter I've ever tasted. Yeah. Of course, there's a premium on that butter, but is able to keep this man's entire life alive, going on with that. And you know, he could do a cheaper product, and he could sell to more places. And I think he maybe has 5 cows that he does. But they've made this compact between him and the owner of this restaurant, and luckily the clientele.
I do think about it a lot these days.
Yeah,
and I think like we're sort of having a rambling conversation about what is a fair playing field for a rich and diverse food industry full of choice.
Yes.
And, you know, because if you just follow efficiency, everyone would have a crew cut.
Right.
Right? If you just follow efficiency. I mean, I had a dream the other night about sort of perfect nutrition, the concept of perfect nutrition.
Yes.
And about 5 years ago, I went back to school and studied nutrition. And if you want to be granular about a meal, it's a very boring way to live. I mean, you can look at the day or the week, but
you could drink soylent
or
powder.
good or bad. But you know, but I kind of had a dream about, you know, set in 50 years' time, and you know, sort of plugging yourself in to nutrition. You know, because we're all so busy, there's no time to eat anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is I'm talking complete rubbish here, but this is a dream I had.
I'm sort of,
and what I'm trying to say is,
where's the joy in it? I guess is what I.
Well, we all want choice, but also, if it's only driven by commerce, it naturally has effect of editing out the kind of dreamers and the thinkers and the carers and the people that will spend like 2 decades perfecting something for the now that was based and riffing off of 300 years of America or the UK. You know what I mean? Like,
I believe in the weirdos who are trying this thing and everybody's looking at them like they're, you know, running around saying the sky is falling, and it turns out.
I had a moment like when I was a kid. One of my defining moments as a chef was I grew up in a little village, and two of my best mates were gypsies, right? Does that translate in, do you know what, do you have gypsies?
No, I think...
So they're sort of like Romany gypsies.
Travelers.
Travelers. They normally live in caravans. They are known for not paying tax and being, fairly tough and tight as a community. But nonetheless, they're sort of, I guess you'd call them outsiders, maybe is the right. But my two best friends were gypsies, right? And I remember he used to literally grow up on jam sandwiches.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
And I remember, and we used to go to my mum and dad's pub. It used to close at 3 and open up again at 6. And we used to go in there and raid the buffet. And I used to make badass sandwiches and combo stuff up, beef, horseradish, pinch of salt, rattle, then I kind of smoke salmon, I'd be stealing it off my parents. But I remember giving my mate, he went to eat a sandwich, which was a smoked salmon sandwich. This is like 30 years ago, 35 years ago. And I stopped. He was just going, stop, whoa. And I squeezed a bit of lemon in it. I know this is really romantic and wanky, but I did it. And he put that in his mouth, and you can't pull that. The face that he pulled of surprise and joy and smoke and salt and acidity and sweetness all in one. I know he'd only ever had sweetness from jam sandwiches. I'm telling you that.
Yeah.
And so I think good thing. I mean, I was in a really cool old record shop the other day where they have valve amps, proper cabs, music that shifts air in a room. And I'm like, dude, surely all your customers are like my age, like sort of 40, 45 years old. He's like, no, mate, all the 20-year-olds are coming in. They're going mad because they've only ever heard music through shitty little earpods. And they think they're cool, but they're the most uncool thing in the world. And they come in here, and it's literally like that smoked salmon moment, like to fear proper bass moving. And for me, food, music, this is all the really good stuff.
It is. I always feel like that moment in The Wizard of Oz when it goes from black and white to color, like those transformative moments. I'm remembering the first time my dad picked up like a Mater Joffrey cookbook and coming home in the house, the way the house smelled.
Yeah.
There was that particular moment. So I want to talk about your cookbook because I've been such a fan of your cookbooks for such a long time, and they really have transformed how I think about specifically like salads were such a huge thing for me because your evolution salads really made me think about texture in a totally different way. And I'm, a food person who's always cared very, very deeply about food. And I got that book. And the way that this is structured for people who haven't seen this particular thing, there are different versions of ways that you can do a salad. There's the basic version, and there are the add-ons, and then there are the super add-ons.
It's pimp my ride for salads.
Yeah, but it informs the way that I, since then have made salads. And gosh, I remember making the beef and Guinness pie out of that as well, and just having this moment. It was something that I didn't know if I could ever achieve at home, and you really have transformed the way so many of us cook in the States. And this particular book is such a pleasure because I've seen friends of mine, British friends of mine, who I have a friend who we've been friends since 1996, and he used to take me to Benji's to get the mixed grill. Like he was such, even through mad cow times, like he was the most dedicated carnivore who I knew. He just loved nothing more than just like greasy meat on a grill. And he is vegetarian now, has his own allotment, and runs marathons and all this. And I can't wait to buy him a copy of this book. Because the genius thing that you've done with this is take these very British classic foods and to make vegetarian versions of them or emphasize the vegetables in it. Can you talk a little bit about changing the mindset of people?
First and foremost, for your listeners, I'm a meat eater and a proud meat eater.
I'm a flexitarian,
and I love food. And but I think over the years, and as I've evolved and learned a lot and travelled a lot, and unexpectedly, a lot of my job has been about not just researching places and people, but also history and patterns. So I think, most of the Mediterranean have always been largely 80% vegetarian. It's just in modern day life, especially in the Western world, we kind of call it being vegetarian. But actually, if you want to go into vegetarian, there's many types of vegetarian and many types of veganism. And I just hate anything divisive.
Yeah.
The fact that you're in or out, I just think piss off.
Exactly.
Go on a journey, explore. try and read your body, do what feels right. Whether you want to do it for health or saving a hell of a load of money, you know, even rubbish meat is expensive.
Yes, it comes at a cost.
I tend to only eat meat at the weekends now. And why? It's kind of easier. If you're kind of a younger couple or younger and you want to save a bit of money, brilliant. I mean, we're talking about thousands of dollars a year on editing 3 or 4 days of crap meat out of your life. I think from a health side of view, you know, we just are learning so much about the relationship between whole body health, including mental health, and the gut. And then if it's about the gut, it's always in one way or another about fiber, you know, the kind of wrapping paper of food. And at what point in the gut the wrapping paper's taken off,
right?
And at what, you know, and the Jenga game that's your stomach. You know, it's not you are what you eat, but you are what you absorb. So I think for me, like taking in my travels and my studies as a nutritionist, but also as a meat loving carnivore, like the thing about a book is I've been asked to write this book for 20 years.
Yeah, you said you did this book 9 years ago.
I wrote this 9 years ago.
Yeah,
and I knew that, and it's the only time I've ever held a book. And I knew that it deserved to be supported by TV.
Yeah.
And just for whatever reason, I'm very lucky. I don't know why, but we broadcast in like 120 countries around the world, and we publish in probably half that. And I knew that like the veg narrative it's not why I did it, but it's quite political. So
extremely.
Just sort of saying, that you don't have to be a vegetarian to have a vegetarian cookbook.
Right.
And also that this is not progress, this is not going forward. Actually, this is going backwards to what our grandparents did. Normal. You know, the idea of eating meat 3 times a day is not
what poor people
that normal.
did too. I mean, it's so much of that of poor people cuisine comes from, especially here in the States, like the Southern cuisine comes from making the most of, you have a tiny bit of meat, maybe you have just some meat fat, maybe you don't have any meat at all, and making those beans go a long way.
Yeah. I completely agree. So I think timing for me was really important on this. And I think what's interesting, and I hope what's happening, I believe it is happening, I think, and it sounds really pretentious, but like...
Bring it.
Well, I'm 20 years in the game, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, if Jamie Oliver does a vegetarian cookbook, it's not only sort of bolstering and supporting all the other incredible authors that have done brilliant vegetarian cookbooks, it's also sort of saying, guys, it's okay. Because it's a really weird thing. Like, you know, this has been publishing amazingly well in Germany, one of the most meat-centric countries on the planet. But we are at an interesting turning point, you know. And whether you're looking at plastics and environment and topsoil and veggies, you know, or, you know, body health, or cost, saving money, you know, however you want to look at it, I think every single person on this planet can benefit from swapping out one meat meal a week, maybe 2. And, you know, generally speaking, what I'm doing now is Monday to Thursday, we're smashing out the veggie dishes. It's working really well. It's fantastic with the kids. I'm then excited for the weekend. The weekend has a different rhythm. And then I go to a butcher and have a conversation.
Yes.
And the difference between a good bit of pork and a cheap bit of pork is uncomparable. You know, it's like trying to get to England from America on a Lilo versus like the QE2. It just, you know, I didn't say Titanic, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's just another game. I mean, like, you know, so I just think it's very timely, and I'm really fascinated to see where it goes. Actually, I think there's a lot of chefs in the industry changing their lens a little bit.
They've been waiting for permission,
for sure, and some will be for better, some will be for worse. I think the most important thing to do is not stop talking about clubs. Stop talking about ism. Just use your instinct and like, you know, it's because it's kind of funny even when I look over 20 years of menus that I've written, you know, sometimes all the starters are veggie. I never even thought about it. Yeah. But it was just made sense.
If you're just eating with the rhythm of how things are and what the earth is giving you at that particular time.
I think being fussy about stuff you put in your mouth is kind of quite cool.
Yeah, taking that moment to really acknowledge the pleasure of what you're doing, like getting to sit down and eat is a privilege. I mean, I know so many people don't have enough to eat, or they haven't given themselves the time to eat. There's so many different reasons that people have skimped and scrapped, and people have so much shame around this that I've been trying, especially in this new year, to, when I do get to sit down and eat, be very conscious of like what I'm putting in my mouth, and getting to be grateful for it and enjoy.
Do you know what? It's a funny thing. I'm not particularly religious. And I don't profess to be in anyone's gang. But I love the idea of grace.
Yes, grace is a great word.
Being grateful for like, because I also think that like eating meat should be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like if you go to France, the chickens all have feet and heads, right? And obviously in the States and England that doesn't rock. But one of the reasons technically that it doesn't rock is because it tells 1,000 tales. If you treat an animal like shit, and for instance, the vast majority, if not most, of the chickens in America, won't have their litter changed. They'll be about 30 days old. They probably won't see daylight, and the ammonia that builds up in their own piss.
Oh God, the smell of those places is
like it burns their feet. So you cut the legs off because you don't want to show the burning, right? In France, if you've got nice feet, it's been roaming around having a lovely life of natural behaviour. Same thing with the head and the eyes. You know what I mean? Like, so with regards to debeaking or cannibalization or sort of any of the kind of ailments you'll get from sort of intensive farming. So it's kind of like the honesty that the French still maintain is amazing. A, if you want to be vegetarian, be vegetarian. B, if it offends you, be vegetarian. And the more the merrier. But B, if you like meat, like by getting decent stuff, it's going to be more nutritious, more delicious. And also you're going to end up probably supporting a family instead of like an organization. So I think like this idea of we should embrace uncomfortableness, and we all need to have that conversation with ourselves about the systems. I mean, it's so funny, like, and again, I can talk about it like we used to get raided by vegans in my restaurants in the UK.
Oh, God.
We get like 20 of them hit me. Because obviously if you do a Jamie Oliver restaurant, you're going to get more PR, this, that, or the other. Yeah. We get like 15, 20 of them come in, they'd have iPads. Saturday morning, they put like slaughter of animals in front of a kid eating a bit of spaghetti bolognese. Or very nice homemade pasta from that day, I'll say. Right in front of kids on a Saturday lunch. Right, they do one restaurant, they'd walk 2 miles up the road into Covent Garden, do the next.
Yeah.
And you sort of think, but then you would see mobs of vegans enjoying the vegan menu at some of the most famous restaurants that really don't care at all. Yeah. And they'd be really happy eating their sweet corn grilled on the same grill as the shitty chicken that had the worst integrity on the planet. Do you know what I mean? So I think like this kind of weird hypocrisy, and the fact, I remember there was a naked woman in a cage outside my restaurant once from PETA.
Oh yeah.
And she was pregnant, and it was about disagreeing with sow stalls in the breeding of pigs. And sow stalls are when you basically cage them, and there's a technical reason for it, which I don't agree in, but it's to stop them sitting on their own babies and killing them. So if they have like 6 babies, like, you don't want to end up with one if you're a farmer, right? So you put them in a cage until they're big enough to not be squashed. Anyway, there's other ways of doing it, much more ethically. And I'm like, sister, why are you here? And she goes, because of sow stall. I said, but my restaurant doesn't have any animals from this system. Why are you here? She goes, well, it's your restaurant. We're going to get more press. And I'm like, but it's not. I'm working really hard to support really good, really amazing farms and like husbandry. And so it's amazing the especially now on social media. There's such, I'm not saying some of it isn't true, but certainly the vast majority of what I'm given by, say, teenagers that are making big choices, understandably so, about the food they eat, a lot of it is really outdated and not from our country.
Yeah.
And illegal. So it's kind of the kind of, I guess everything in our world at the moment is about truth, isn't it?
Yes.
The truth.
Yeah. Sorting the fake from the true. Like it, so I'm getting the wrap it up sign from our producer because they want us to shut down. But I want to, I want to hear you.
Kim's looking downloading porn on her phone, and so she's fine.
But I want to say, like, I've always really appreciated the fact that you have not shied away from being the front person for a lot of uncomfortable subjects, because I see the heat that you take, and I see that you addressing the discomfort. So I'm thinking like 2020 is a great year for discomfort and grace.
I think if you care,
Yeah.
and if any of your listeners care
Yeah.
about...
I think if they're listening, going out of their way to listen to this, they care.
Well, if they care, well, welcome to the world of bumps.
Yeah.
The minute you care, everything becomes hard.
Yeah.
And perfect doesn't exist.
No. It's the enemy of progress.
If you don't care, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy.
A friend of mine always...
I mean, honestly, whether it's caring... we've opened restaurants in places where all my ethos is, enshrined in procurement and contracts and us visiting farms and stuff. We've had stuff where we've had scenarios where the animals that we're cooking are better looked after than the staff we're employing. And we have to fix that very quickly. And that's a cultural thing.
Yes.
But if you're breaking... what do they call it? Breaking pact, or if you're breaking away from what's culturally normal there, you get some really complicated scenarios happening.
Oh yes.
But I just think it's a fascinating industry. It's one of the best industries in the world. I think it's under a lot of pressure at the moment. I think we're in a hard time.
It's a very, very hard time, like so many different factors, but I do feel like we're coming to that wonderful state of discomfort where people who for a very long time, people who haven't had the resources have had to bear the burden of all of this, and now it seems like more people who have the privileges are questioning themselves, and that's where it needs to happen. And the people who actually have the advantages of things need to look at where they can afford to be uncomfortable.
It's got to be easier for good people to do good work.
Yeah.
And the common denominator can't be stack it high, sell it cheap shit.
Yeah.
And there has to be some fat and some cushioning in the middle.
Yeah.
I know chefs at the top of their game, winning all the awards, busy restaurants, and if you look through their sort of eyes, you know that they're just paying the bills every week. They're just, at the top of their game, and it's just not good enough. There needs to be a bit more fat in the game, and there are very easy ways of defining a small family business to a medium-sized business to a huge organisation. And, it's quite interesting in time, obviously, when I was sort of saying earlier that my failed business, which I'm very proud of, paid over £100 million tax in our 13 years. That's a fucking damn sight more than some of the big tech companies that operate in the UK that are like trillions of the size. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think how could, and part of our demise was sort of
caring.
Was the kind of the tech revolution in food. If you've got a half decent restaurant, even if it's mid-market, and you got some sweaty, hairy ass bike rider that's turning up to pick up your kind of food to go, do you know what I mean? It's not cool. Retrospectively, having a separate door or a hole in the wall is tough, man. And also, what's interesting is good food normally is more hydrated. So literally, bad food when it goes through delivery, you could put it through like a nuclear fallout and it'd still look the same. If you take a really good pizza and really good grains and slow leaven dough, wood oven crust,
that's just not
San
going to
Marzano
travel.
tomatoes, lovely mozzarella, herbs, and then you put that on a bike and he's going up a hill, swaggering his hiney left and right. It literally is like Papa Pomodoro by the time they get to the other end.
And it's just it's just sad, soggy salad on a pizza. You don't want that to be representative of your food that you're putting out in the world.
Not at all, but we all live in hope, right? We live in hope.
We try, man. We try. And I really think that this is going to get some more people cooking at home, and maybe people who had before thought vegetarian, what's that? And, somebody's dad, who needs their Sunday roast. They need their whatever.
I wanted to make it the most accessible veggie book for a meat eater.
Yeah.
So getting that rhythm of kind of, mac and cheese, but like fully loaded.
Yeah.
But that feeling of comfort and right, that's a good dinner done. you know, but I had to get those in, you know, amazing stews, curries, stir fries,
Cheese
dumplings.
toasty with kimchi.
You know, yeah, you know that makes sense.
I mean, in my head, I'm calling it kimchi's.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is like, it's only a small amount of people in Britain say know what kimchi is really.
Yeah.
But it is in every supermarket now.
Yeah.
And they have it in little Cryovac packs. And they're really stable. And no one really knows what to do with it. So you start, you start putting it in a toasty that you can knock out in 4 minutes, and you cut that up to little soldiers, and you have that with a cold beer on a Friday night. Shabon.
Oh my God! 20 years from now, people are just going to be eating these things and not even think, when did we all start doing that? Like, and they're going to point to the book. And
well, you never know. You never know.
I have a feeling. I really, really do, and I'm grateful. I know the kind of day you had, and I'm grateful that you're spending this time.
Listen, I'm already grateful because what was quite niche, which was vegetarian, like touch wood, it's the best-selling veggie book of all time in the UK, and like it's doing really well in Germany, and and of course I'm grateful for that because it pays my wages. But I think more so it kind of means that it's gone from being niche to mainstream, and I think kind of that's my job. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you're that guy.
Because like even 3 years ago, talking about food or a dinner without meat was like a really weird, divisive conversation, almost implying that men wouldn't be men.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
There was this book in the 80s, Real Men Don't Eat Quiche, and I'm actually writing a piece about what a weird-ass thing that was, and they needed a follow-up book about...
Do you know what I found the other day, which is funny? I found... obviously, as I'm sure you know, my beginning of my career was The Naked Chef.
Yes.
And, there was it came from like, I did a little thing saying stripping restaurant food down to its bare essentials. Naked Chef. And it kind of worked really well. But I found a book from 1971. Oh, God. An American book, which was the first Naked Chef cookbook. And it was all about cooking food to get laid. And
I collect those, actually.
Eroticism of food.
I actually have a collection of all those like 60s, 70s like bachelor cookbooks.
Try and get it, because I was reading some excerpts of that book to my wife the other day, and it was basically saying to women like, look, the boys are having loads of fun with their city lunches, this, that, and the other. If you want to keep your boys, right, you need to up the beef jerky, right? And if you want to up the beef jerky, you need to, like, the first port of call, the bedroom starts in the kitchen. So it was, it was kind of everything you don't say now, with it, like, this is pre...
This is the pre-Me Too. It's
but, no, well, it's, I don't think it's Me Too. I think it was pre... women coming of age in every sector, as they are doing very well, and we're still obviously working on.
You have some fantastic UK women chefs.
But this is the beauty of books, right? You can look at a book, and it takes you back to a moment. They say things that you would never say now, but and it was quite explicit about how food fitted in to sex life.
Oh my God!
But to be honest, and to sort of finish this interview on a high, I mean,
what are the recipes from this?
No. But the Naked Chef, actually, when it kicked off, the first year and a half was tough because men. Absolutely, it was driven by Women magazine and female journalists. If I look back in the tear sheets, and men absolutely hated me until they realised that if they could just learn to cook, they would be a much more exciting asset to their lovely ladies. So it took a year and a half for men to realise that I wasn't a threat; I was actually an ally.
Right.
And I have no idea how we got onto The Naked Chef. Oh, yes, I found that old cookbook.
Right.
So it's an American cookbook. Look it up.
What's it called?
The front cover, it's called The Naked
Chef.
It is. Have you not been listening?
I thought, because I thought you were just saying it was The Naked Chef. It was actually called...
The Naked Chef.
Okay.
And the original, and the front cover is a peach, a provocative peach.
Now the children use the emojis.
It's really funny.
They use the aubergine, they use the peach.
The aubergine and the target is my favourite emoji. I haven't found the run-up emoji yet, but I might put that before the aubergine. Anyway, is that a good way to finish our podcast?
I think that is a perfect thing. 2 quick questions to ask that we ask everybody.
Go on.
Have you ever cried in the walk-in?
No.
You have not cried in the walk-in?
No, I've cried in so many other places, but just not the walk-in fridge.
Okay, I think you're the only chef who has never cried in the walk-in.
No, I remember once... I cried with laughter in the walk-in because one of my co-chefs was through, the rubber curtains. Mm-hmm. He came through them and did a reenactment of his birth. And my boss at the time, who was an incredible Alice Waters-like character, mm-hmm. She was like, "Oh my God, I've seen a lot of things in my career. I've never seen anything like that." But therefore, I did cry in the walk-in fridge because that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Amazing. What is the toughest job in a restaurant?
I think they're all tough if you do them properly. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think they're all tough if you do them mm-hmm. properly. I think probably like physically, a busy grill section mm-hmm. is tough on your face, tough on your hands, it's tough on your hydration. That's a really, a good grill chef is like up there with a good sushi cutter. Mm-hmm. It's tough.
I can tell the cooks on the train on the way home because by their arms.
Yeah.
Like the grill chefs have.
Yeah, it's just like, listen, just put your cuffs down. It's a funny one though, isn't it? The fashions of chefs.
Oh yeah.
It's all very tattoos and beards at the moment. It's quite an interesting one. I'm always proposing unconventional ideas, but I'm not a massive fan of beards in kitchens. I'm just
because you gotta have the net.
I just don't. No, they won't. They won't wear a net. I said, can you just shave, guys, or have a net? Mm-hmm. And the answer is they'll just all go. And everyone's so short-staffed
that you
can't even, as a boss now, say. The last thing on the planet I would want to have as a customer or an employer is a chef with a big old beard. I mean, really? Yeah. Fashion aside. But even if I said I'll pay you $2,000 extra to have the beard off, mm-hmm. that someone would find fault in that. It's just, but so I do like a clean chef. I must say, hygiene's underrated in the kitchen. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but I think this is perfect.
Maybe pedicures and manicure next.
I think they can keep their feet in the clogs. They can...
Clogs. Oh, my God, clogs. The years and pain of clogs.
It's not...
But then at least Birkenstocks came along and saved the day.
Everyone I know...
And then it's Crocs now.
Oh, God. Not good. I think that is I think they will kill us if we go anywhere over. But thank you so much to my guest today, Jamie Oliver. And you can pick up his book, Ultimate Veg, at really any place that sells books. You can go to an independent bookseller if you would like to do that. That's always a really great thing to do. And you can see him in a million different places with his TV shows. I was just trying to convince him to start his own podcast because he's such a thoughtful thinker on how we get our food, how it comes into our lives, and who we're really supporting while we're doing it. So thank you so much to Jamie. And if you want to hear more of Communal Table, there are a few ways you can go about that. What really, really helps is if you go to whatever platform that you get your podcasts. You can go to Spotify. You can, we actually have a YouTube channel. You can go to Stitcher. You can go right to foodandwine.com, and there is our podcast. If on any of these podcasts you care to leave stars and a review, that really helps with the algorithms, and that helps more people to find this podcast and lets us keep doing it. You can also always find the latest episode if you subscribe to the Food and Wine Pro newsletter. Food and Wine Pro is a great section of foodandwine.com where we're really talking about issues in the industry, what happens, really the sort of care and feeding of the people in the industry and the business decisions that go into it. We have a weekly newsletter that our editor-in-chief, Hunter Lewis, writes. Sometimes I pinch hit on it, and we always have the newest podcast in there. If there's somebody you think I should be talking to or a topic that you would like to hear us address, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm on Twitter at @kittenwithawhip. You can hit me up on all social platforms and find me. I want to thank a few people. Our fantastic team on the podcast, Margot Gotthelf, Hallie Tarpley, and Jen Martinick, and our wonderful camera crew. It switches up all the time. I'm always grateful for you wonderful people who make this look and sound so good. And I'd like to thank Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. And you, lovely listeners, take good care of yourself until the next time.